Are people by and large honest or dishonest?
People are liars. People are absolutely dishonest, but it's not because they're intentionally dishonest. They don't even know what is true to them. Have you ever asked somebody, what do they want from life? If you ask somebody, what do you want out of life? Almost everybody has a quick answer. Oh, it's easy. I want travel. I want happiness. I want satisfaction. And then if you push them just a little bit farther and you say, well, what is satisfaction? What is the satisfaction that you want? Now all of a sudden they start to get tied up in the details because they haven't thought about it. It's not that they haven't thought about it at all, it's that they haven't thought about it honestly. So they can't honestly define what their satisfaction is. So they start to pull from things that they've heard in other places, things that they've read, things that other friends have said, things they saw in a movie somewhere. And it won't take long before you start to be able to show them that what they want and what their actions are contradicting each other. And when you get to that point, you really start to see that the person you're talking to isn't lying to you, they're lying to themselves. They haven't even been honest with themselves. How can they be honest with anybody else? And it's because of that need, that constant habit of deceit, that we live in a world where people don't know the truth for themselves and they certainly don't know the truth in each other. And that's why the vast majority of people are inherently distrustful of one another. Even though we wear smiles, even though we say, I trust you, I love you, whatever, we don't actually believe that. But we're not willing to admit to ourselves that we don't believe that. So we are even lying to ourselves.
Yeah. Um, in evolution, they studied deceit quite a bit because they're always trying to answer why in the hell would a cooperative species, where the dominant theory in evolution is that we evolved for language and we evolved for all this intelligence because we had to cooperate and sort of fight natural forces. And so if you're going to be cooperative, why would the need to lie evolve? And it's a huge question mark because fundamentally humans are programmed with deceit, and we are deceitful in many ways, including in ways with ourselves. And you are kind of right in that it's not that I'm lying to myself, but I haven't really spent enough time thinking about it, or don't really have the words or the resources or the access to truly formulate what I want out of life. It's spot on. Nobody really knows what they want out of life. They'll use buzzwords that they heard on some media programming at some point. Freedom's one of them, travel's one of them. Most people who want to travel, when they do travel, are still as miserable as they were back home. But do you think this sort of dishonesty is inherent to humanness or humanity, or is it a consequence of the system that we're a part of and this sort of social play that we engage in? And even the fact that I've been following rules for 30 goddamn years. Give me a break. I'll just lie and get out of it, right? The dishonesty is a relief from society sometimes. You eject out of society when you lie. You have this private world in your head where they cannot find you. Why do you think are people dishonest?
It goes right back to what we were talking about earlier with our survival instincts, right? So when we there's a concept that CIA teaches us where our biological evolution has not kept pace with our social and technological evolution, right? So our biological evolution has not kept pace with our social and technical evolution. Our social and technical evolution has happened quickly. We've evolved very quickly from being cavemen in a stone cave to being human beings on smartphones living in towers made out of steel and glass. But biologically, we're still very similar to the cavemen living in the cave. What that means is that we haven't changed physiologically. The composition of our brain and our bodies haven't changed. We're still the same kind of soft, vulnerable mass that we always were. It's not like we've grown thicker skin and warmer hair. If anything, we've gotten softer and weaker because of our social and technological evolution. So when we were cavemen, when we were, pre-Magnon, we realized that there were not enough resources to go around. When you and I lived in a plain, and when our ancestors of ancestors lived in a field, there were only certain trees that were bearing fruit, and those trees only bore fruit for a certain period of time. And when you went out to pick the trees and I went out to pick the trees, we were competing against each other to see who could get the most fruit, because we both understood that the fruit is limited. We still think the same way now, even though the limitation is gone. We still think that there's only so many apples to be collected. So I have to collect them. I have to wake up earlier than you and stay up later than you. I have to find a way to steal apples from you when you're sick or when you're sleeping. I have to do whatever I can to collect as much as I can, because what I don't want is to ever be needing food. I would rather have my apples rotting in my cave than have you have enough apples to feed yourself. Because if you have enough apples, that might mean I don't have enough apples.
Hmm.
And that's how we are biologically wired. So fast forward till today, and it's the same way. Rich people aren't rich because they're greedy. They're rich because they want more, and they know how to get more, and they never know when it's going to run out. Celebrities aren't famous because they need the attention. They recognize that they don't know when the attention is going to change. And they all recognize that they're getting older, and one day they'll be too old for the camera to want to look at them anymore. So they have to collect as much as they can right now, almost like squirrels saving for the winter. That's how we're all wired. And lying is inherent to being able to collect more and make sure nobody knows that you've collected more than you need. So lying is inherent to human beings because lying is inherent to survival. You don't want people to know how much food you have. You don't want them to know how strong you are. You don't want them to know where the best fruit trees are. You don't want them to know where the best fishing hole is. You want them to be stuck with less so that you can have more, which guarantees your survival and the survival of those who come after you.
Yeah, there's a biological line. I completely agree that for survival it makes sense. We are not just cooperative; we're also competing. We're doing both, and for competition's sake, I have to lie. And so on big matters, I kind of get it. When I think about it theoretically for myself, I kind of get why I would need to lie where the apples are, because I don't want Andrew near my apples. Those are my apples. But then why would I lie to Andrew or my wife or Himanshu over here about small things? We do this innocuous lie stuff all the time. And yeah, you can say, well, your muscle is built, so you keep flexing it. You know how to lie, so you keep lying. But it begs the question, and I'm sure this is very helpful, when you're dealing with people on the field, what are people actually trying to preserve when they're lying? Because it looks like they're trying to preserve some kind of optical sense of self, like this perception of me. Sometimes they're trying to preserve what they think of as their self-concept, and I don't want that destroyed, what we famously call ego. But what are people actually trying to preserve when they do innocuous lying?
So remember how we were talking about the hierarchy of needs? And then we also talked about that there is a separate measure called the hierarchy of desires. So as we meet the lower levels of our desires, we start to have higher levels of desire. I think your question specifically earlier was, what drives people?
Right.
Right? What drives people? The thing that drives people is what they desire. What drives them is not what they need. There's lots of people who need better jobs and more money, and that's not enough to get them to get a better job or a better education. They'll beg on the street rather than actually take the initiative to go change their life. What drives people is the hierarchy of desires, and that's also what drives people to lie. Your first desire is for safety. So you're looking for safety. You're looking for a roof over your head. You're looking for a tribe of people that you can rely on. Well, once you have that safety, then your desire changes to something else. It changes to status. It changes to popularity. It changes to power. And at the top of that ladder is your chief aspiration, right? You want to aspire for more. That's at the top of the food chain for what you want. And what is more? More is exactly that. It is more. More power, more wealth, more success, more travel, more freedom. And when you get it, you want more still. And you can't even define it because more is just more. And everybody wants more. There is
Hmm.
nobody out there who doesn't want more of the thing that they like. More time to play video games, more chances to try new wine, more opportunity to, to be with their kids or love their wife or have sex with strangers. Everybody wants more.
Hmm.
So that's why we have those innocuous lies, Prakar,
Very
because
interesting.
when we have our base desires met, we still want something else. So then we lie to protect the thing that we want. So we tell these innocuous white lies because we want to protect our ego, or we want to protect our intentions, or we want to protect our vulnerabilities, and we don't want to share those with somebody else because they're ours. And what we don't want is somebody else to know more than we know about ourselves.